What if the perfect home became the scene of your worst nightmare? Today, we're diving deep into Dream House, the 2011 psychological thriller starring Daniel Craig, Rachel Weisz, and Naomi Watts. It's a film filled with twists, tragedy, and a mystery that blurs the line between reality and illusion. Get ready, because we're about to break down the entire story, share my honest opinion, compare it to similar films, and give it a final rating. Let's step inside. The magazine's editor-in-chief, writer Will Eytenten, resigns from his position and decides to spend his time writing a new novel in his new country house with his wife and two daughters, Trish, 7, and Dee, 5. Outside, it is winter, the wind howls, and branches beat against the window. The family lives in comfort and warmth, expecting no trouble. At night, Dee sees a strange man in the window and becomes very frightened. Her parents calm her down, explaining that she was scared of her own reflection in the window and mistook it for a stranger. However, when Will goes out to clear the snow in the morning, he notices footprints in the snow leading right up to the windows, through which one could easily watch the girls. At night, Will wakes up to a strange noise. He gets out of bed and, going down to the basement, hears a conversation through the wall. Bursting suddenly into an unfamiliar part of the house, he finds a group of goths excitedly discussing some event. The goths also fearfully explain that the house stood empty for 5 years and they had no idea anyone was living there. Then they peer at his face and joyfully shout, "He's back!" Will doesn't understand what is going on and contacts the police. They tell him that 5 years ago, a family of 4 was shot dead in the house where Will lives. Peter Ward, the father, survived, while their mother and 2 daughters died from the gunshots. The police also give him the name of the psychiatric hospital where Peter was treated. Arriving at the hospital, Will looks for Peter, wanting to tell him to leave his family alone. There, he receives unpleasant news. Peter Ward is Will Eytenten himself. The director shows him a video recording of Will's face and says that his family does not exist, it is merely his fantasy. Then he adds that Will was recently released, and he came up with the name himself after seeing a code on an envelope for letters, W1-1L, the 8th of October 10, sounds like Will Eytenten. Will does not believe it, returns home, but finds it in a dirty state, with broken windows, rotten boards, and strange inscriptions about murders. Will enters the house, sits on the floor in a fetal position, and screams in grief. His family is dead, and the only suspect is himself. But in the evening, the house comes alive and the whole family returns. Will tells his wife what happened, but she refuses to believe it. That same evening, the girls develop a high fever and breathing problems. Will notices that Trish has a gunshot wound on her chest. The same thing happens with Dee. Soon the girls die in their parents' arms. Libby, now believing Will, sobs with grief on his shoulder. The next day, everything returns to normal again, but Libby's memory retains Will's words. Will and Libby begin to talk about what happened 5 years ago. Suddenly, Will's neighbor knocks on the door. It is Anne, Libby's best friend, and tells Will that he must let them go, both this house and these memories, otherwise he will not be able to live a normal life. During the conversation, Will remembers that fateful day. The killer was not him, but a hitman hired by Anne's husband. At that moment, Anne's husband and that same hitman burst into their house. Anne and Will are drugged. Libby watches what is happening, unable to intervene. Will and Anne are taken to the basement, and Jack, Anne's husband, sets it on fire, then shoots the hitman because the hitman went to the wrong house last time. He was supposed to kill Anne. Her husband wanted to take revenge on her for the divorce. Soon Will regains consciousness and decides to stop Jack. Libby, deciding to help her husband, brushes against the wind chimes, thereby confusing Jack. Will strikes him, and Jack loses consciousness. Eytenten unties Anne and carries her outside, away from the house. Regaining consciousness after a while, Jack runs upstairs and tries to get out, but the hitman, who turns out to be alive, pours kerosene onto the staircase, which immediately ignites. Jack is engulfed in flames. Will decides to return home and stay with his family. Libby tells him that he doesn't need to worry about them, and tells him to go back, because his time has not yet come. Will kisses his daughters and wife one last time. At that moment, an explosion occurs in the next room, and the ghosts of his wife and daughters disappear. Will runs outside and stares at his house for a long time. Some time later, Will sees his novel Dream House displayed in a bookstore window. It has become a bestseller. Alright, so that is the complete story of Dream House. Now, let's get into my personal opinion. I'll be honest. Dream House is a frustrating film. It has all the ingredients of a truly great psychological thriller. The cast is phenomenal. Daniel Craig carries so much vulnerability and raw pain, and his real-life chemistry with Rachel Weisz gives the illusory family sequences a genuine warmth that makes the twist hurt all the more. The atmosphere, directed by Jim Sheridan, is impeccable. That house feels both cozy and deeply menacing, and the wintry cinematography is stunning. But the script is a mess. The film was famously meddled with by the studio, and you can absolutely feel it. The big reveal that Will is actually Peter, and that his family are figments, happens way too early, and it's handled in a very clunky, exposition-heavy way. Then it pivots into a more conventional thriller about the hitman and the conspiracy, which feels like two different movies stitched together. The tonal shift is jarring. What could have been a haunting exploration of grief and guilt, like a truly great psychological drama, instead becomes a slightly generic whodunit. The potential was sky high, and the landing just isn't as powerful as it needed to be. When you compare it to similar films, its flaws become even clearer. Take Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. That film also stars a protagonist trapped in a delusion, set in a confined, atmospheric location. But Shutter Island fully commits to the psychological depth, building its twist so carefully that upon rewatch, you see the cracks everywhere. Dream House explains the twist away too quickly and then moves on. Then there's The Sixth Sense, with its iconic afterlife twist. The emotional devastation in that film comes from the lingering, unresolved pain of the dead, which is a theme Dream House flirts with but never fully explores. Other films like The Others or even A Beautiful Mind handle the concept of protagonists not seeing reality far more elegantly. Dream House, sadly, sits in the shadow of those masterpieces, feeling like a missed opportunity. So, my final rating. Taking into account the strong performances, the beautiful cinematography, but ultimately the compromised and fractured narrative, I'm giving Dream House a 6 out of 10. It's a film that you want to love, and there are moments that are genuinely affecting, but it never becomes the masterpiece it could have been. It's worth a watch if you're a fan of the cast or these kinds of twisty thrillers, but go in with managed expectations. That's my take on Dream House. What did you think of the film? Did the twists work for you? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more deep dives into the films you love and the ones that got away. Thanks for watching.